Welcome to the Cozy Storytime, your peaceful space to unwind and relax. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and like the video for more cozy stories every night. So, where are you watching it from? And what are you doing right now? I hope you enjoyed this story. Now, imagine yourself in a quiet place, a warm room illuminated by the soft glow of candlelight. The wind whispers gently outside the window, carrying serenity with every breath you take. The world around you begins to fade, slowly sinking into silence. Tonight, we will step into a story, a mystery hidden behind the walls of Hogwarts. An adventure that begins with an ancient map, glowing faintly in the darkness, whispering secrets that were meant to be forgotten. Close your eyes, feel each word drawing you deeper into the tale. Take a slow breath and let it go. Now, let your imagination carry you to Hogwarts, to a secret that has never been uncovered before. Enjoy the story. The library's restricted section had always been a place of silent mystery. Rows of towering bookshelves line the dimly lit chamber, their ancient tomes locked behind iron chains, whispering secrets no student should ever hear. Even though I had spent countless nights sneaking into the library under the cover of my invisibility cloak, I had never dared to venture this deep. Until tonight. I wasn't looking for trouble, only a book. A simple, forgotten text that could help me with my defense against the dark arts assignment. Professor Lupin had mentioned a lost treatise on counter curses, one that had been misplaced long before he became a professor at Hogwarts. According to him, it contained spells capable of neutralizing even the most dangerous of hexes, and as someone who had an unfortunate habit of getting caught in the middle of magical trouble, I figured it wouldn't hurt to learn a few more defensive spells. I had just slipped past the enchanted gate that marked the entrance to the restricted section when I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. It wasn't the cold. Hogwarts was always a bit drafty, even in the summer. No, this was different. It was as if the very air around me was charged with something unnatural. The library seemed to hold its breath, the floating dust particles frozen in the slivers of candlelight that flickered against the walls. Ignoring the unease gnawing at my gut, I stepped forward, my wand casting a faint glow as I whispered, "Lumos." The restricted section had always felt ominous, but tonight, the shadows seemed deeper, the books more restless. Some tomes trembled on their shelves, their leather covers twitching as if aware of my presence. Others were chained so tightly that I could hear the iron links creaking, warning me not to come any closer. I moved carefully between the aisles, my fingers tracing the spines of ancient texts, searching for the one book that might help me. But it wasn't a book that I found. It was a scroll. A simple parchment roll, bound in deep crimson silk, resting on a pedestal that had been hidden behind a row of forgotten tomes. Its edges were old, frayed by time, but the golden ink that curled along its surface shimmered faintly, as though still alive. I hesitated. Something about it felt wrong. Parchments were common in the library, but this one was different. It seemed untouched by dust, as if it had been placed there moments ago. The golden runes that lined its surface pulsed with a rhythm that didn't belong to mere ink. They glowed softly, almost as if the scroll itself was breathing. Curiosity won over caution. I reached out, fingers trembling slightly, and touched the edge of the silk binding. The moment my skin made contact, the air around me shifted. A whisper, barely audible, slithered through the darkness. "You should not have found this." I snatched my hand back, heart pounding. My eyes darted around the room, searching for the source of the voice. But the library was empty. The shelves stood silent, the books locked in their eternal slumber. For a second, I considered leaving it alone. Whatever this scroll was, it clearly wasn't meant for me. But then, I thought of all the strange things I had encountered at Hogwarts. A map that revealed secret passages. A diary that could possess its reader. A locket that could drain the very essence of one's soul. Secrets had a way of finding me. Slowly, cautiously, I reached out again and untied the silk ribbon. The scroll unfurled in my hands, the golden ink flaring brilliantly before settling into delicate lines and curves. My breath hitched. It was a map. But not just any map. Hogwarts was drawn in exquisite detail, but unlike the Marauder's map, this one depicted passageways and corridors I had never seen before. Rooms that weren't on any floor plan. Stairs that led to nowhere. Doors that did not exist. And at the very center of the map, hidden beneath the foundations of the castle, was a mark. A chamber encircled by ancient runes, with a single word scrawled beside it in trembling handwriting. "Beware." A chill raced down my spine. I traced the lines of the map, my mind struggling to make sense of what I was seeing. The chamber was unlike anything I had ever heard of. Even the room of requirement, which could shift and change based on need, did not exist in the way this place was drawn. "What is this?" I whispered. The moment the words left my lips, the map moved. The ink shimmered, shifting and changing, the golden lines twisting into new patterns before settling into place once more. My fingers trembled as I watched a new path appear, one that led straight to me. A sudden gust of wind rushed through the library, rattling the chains that bound the books. The whisper returned, closer this time, curling around my ear like a breath of cold air. "It is not yours to take." I nearly dropped the scroll. The voice wasn't coming from the map, it was coming from the darkness itself. I had to get out of here. Clutching the scroll to my chest, I turned on my heel and sprinted toward the exit. My heart pounded against my ribs as my footsteps echoed through the empty aisles. The moment I reached the enchanted gate, I pressed my wand to the lock and muttered, "Alhamra." The gate swung open with a groan, and I slipped through just as the whisper surged behind me, a gust of unseen force slamming into the bars. I didn't dare look back. I ran through the darkened halls of Hogwarts, my breath coming in ragged gasps, the scroll burning like fire in my grip. The castle, usually a place of safety, now felt vast and unfamiliar, its corridors stretching endlessly as though trying to keep me trapped within its walls. When I finally reached the Gryffindor common room, I practically collapsed against the portrait of the fat lady. "Password?" she asked, peering at me with sleepy eyes. "Fortuna Major," I gasped. The portrait swung open, and I stumbled inside. The common room was warm and familiar, the golden glow of the fireplace casting flickering shadows across the walls. The room was empty, save for a single figure curled up in an armchair, a thick book resting in her lap. Hermione. She looked up, her brow furrowing the moment she saw me. Harry? What's wrong? I couldn't speak. My hands shook as I unrolled the map, laying it out on the table between us. The golden ink gleamed under the firelight, the mysterious chamber pulsing like a heartbeat at the center of the page. Hermione's face paled. She stared at the map for a long moment before whispering, "Where did you find this?" I swallowed hard. In the restricted section. Her eyes darted from the map to my face, her expression tight with something that looked very much like fear. "Harry," she said slowly, "do you have any idea what this is?" I shook my head. She exhaled sharply, running a hand through her hair. "This isn't just a map. It's a warning." My stomach twisted. A warning for what? She hesitated, her fingers tracing the words scrawled beside the hidden chamber. "Beware." When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "For something that was never meant to be found." And for the first time that night, I realized, whatever I had discovered, whatever this map was leading to, it was not meant to be seen. But it was too late. Because now that I had found it, it had already begun. The fire crackled softly in the Gryffindor common room, casting flickering shadows across Hermione's face. She hadn't said anything for several long seconds, her eyes darting between the glowing ink on the map and my face, her expression caught between disbelief and concern. I swallowed hard. "Hermione, what do you mean, it's a warning?" She hesitated. Her fingers trembled slightly as she traced the ancient runes surrounding the mysterious chamber at the center of the map. "I've read about something like this before," she finally said, her voice quieter than usual. "But it was only a legend. A story." I frowned. "What story?" She glanced up at me, biting her lip as if debating whether to say it aloud. But in the end, Hermione never could resist the urge to explain. Hundreds of years ago, before Hogwarts was fully established as the school we know today, there were secret chambers built deep beneath the castle. Most of them were lost to time, hidden by magic so powerful that even the founders couldn't undo it. She pointed at the chamber on the map. This could be one of them." My stomach twisted. "You mean like the Chamber of Secrets?" Hermione shook her head. "No, not quite. The Chamber of Secrets was Salazar Slytherin's creation, built for a very specific purpose, to house the basilisk and to rid the school of Muggleborns. But there were other rooms, built before even Slytherin laid his claim." She took a deep breath. "Rooms that were never meant to be found." The way she said it sent a shiver down my spine. I turned my attention back to the map, my fingers tracing the hidden pathways I had never seen before. But why would this chamber be hidden? What's inside it? Hermione exhaled, closing her eyes for a brief moment. According to the legend, there was a room of power, locked away by the first wizards who ever lived at Hogwarts. It was said to contain knowledge so dangerous that it could change the fate of the wizarding world. Some believed it held ancient magic lost to time, magic that even Dumbledore would fear to use. I felt my heartbeat quicken. And this map, it leads right to it. She nodded grimly. which means someone wanted it to be found. That thought chilled me. This map had been in the restricted section of the library, untouched by dust, hidden in a place where no student should have found it. Had someone left it for me? Or worse, had it been waiting? Hermione's fingers brushed the parchment gently, her eyes scanning the runes with an intensity that only she could manage. After a moment, she frowned. These markings. I leaned in. What about them? They're not just warnings. They're seals. She jabbed at the golden symbols surrounding the chamber. This isn't just an entrance, someone locked this place away. And from what I can tell, unlocking it won't be easy. I hesitated. But it's possible? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for a book that had been lying open on the armrest of her chair. It was a thick, ancient-looking volume titled Myths and Enchantments of the Old World. She flipped through the pages quickly, searching for something. When she found it, she turned the book toward me. The illustration on the page showed a massive stone door covered in eerie golden script similar to the ones on the map. Underneath, a single passage was written in flowing script. The hidden path is sealed by 3, and 3 must find the key. I frowned. What does that mean? Hermione tapped the words, her voice urgent. If I'm right, this means that the entrance to this chamber can't be opened by just one person. It needs 3. 3 people who can unlock the magic binding it shut. A weight settled in my chest. 3 people. That meant we need Ron. Hermione nodded. And quickly. I clenched my fists, feeling the parchment between my fingers. Whatever this map led to, someone had tried to keep it hidden. But why? And who had sealed it in the first place? I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. But I also knew I couldn't leave it alone. The next morning, Ron was in a foul mood. He had just come back from Quidditch practice, his hair still damp with sweat, when Hermione and I cornered him in the Gryffindor common room. You both look way too serious for this early in the morning, he grumbled, throwing himself onto the couch. What's going on? I glanced at Hermione, and she nodded. Without another word, I unrolled the map. Ron sat up immediately. That's not the Marauder's map. No, I said, it's something else. His eyes skimmed the glowing lines, his brows furrowing. What am I looking at? Hermione took over. This is an older map of Hogwarts. One that shows passages and rooms that don't exist anymore. Ron whistled. Blimey. He tapped the chamber at the center of the parchment. And what's this? I hesitated. We think it's an ancient room. One that was sealed away a long time ago. Ron shot me a skeptical look. And you want to go there? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Ron groaned. Why is it always something dangerous with you two? Hermione ignored him. Ron, we need 3 people to open it. She pointed at the passage in the book. If this legend is correct, we can't even get inside unless 3 people are present. Ron rubbed his temples. Okay, fine, But before I agree to this madness, tell me one thing. What exactly is in there? Hermione bit her lip. We don't know. Ron gave her a long, suffering look. Brilliant. But after a moment, he sighed, dragging a hand through his hair. All right. I'll do it. But if this ends with us getting cursed, I swear I'll haunt you both. A rush of relief flooded through me. We won't let that happen. Ron snorted. Yeah, because that makes me feel so much better. That night, we waited until the castle had fallen silent. The three of us, huddled under my invisibility cloak, moved quickly through the empty halls, the map clutched tightly in my hands. The path it showed wasn't on any normal Hogwarts blueprint, and some of the corridors it led us down felt wrong. The air grew colder the deeper we went, as if we were stepping into a place where the castle itself had forgotten time. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of winding passages and staircases that shouldn't exist, we reached it. A massive stone wall, covered in the same golden script that glowed on the map. Hermione's breath hitched. This is it. Ron shivered. I hate this already. I stepped forward, holding the map in one hand, my wand in the other. The symbols on the stone pulsed softly, as if waiting. The whisper returned. Turn back. My grip tightened on my wand. We're doing this. Hermione raised her wand, her voice steady. 3 must find the key. Ron exhaled sharply, stepping forward. Let's hope this doesn't kill us. And together, we reached for the door. The moment our hands touched the stone, the golden runes blazed with light. And the wall vanished. Beyond it, darkness stretched before us. And something was waiting inside. The moment the wall vanished, a cold gust of air rushed past us, carrying with it the scent of damp stone and something ancient, something forgotten. The darkness beyond the threshold was almost unnatural, an abyss stretching into nothingness. For a brief second, none of us moved. The golden runes that had covered the entrance flickered and disappeared, leaving no trace of the doorway behind us. Ron swallowed audibly. I already regret this. Hermione ignored him, her eyes scanning the black void ahead. Lumos. The tip of her wand flared to life, casting a soft, blue-white glow that barely illuminated the floor beneath our feet. I followed her lead, raising my own wand. Lumos. Ron hesitated, but then muttered the spell as well. Our combined light revealed the edges of an ancient corridor, its stone walls cracked and covered in faded carvings. Dust hung heavy in the air, disturbed by our breath. This place hasn't been touched in centuries, Hermione whispered, running her fingers lightly over a symbol on the wall. It looked like a serpent coiling around an eye. These markings, they're older than Hogwarts itself. I took a cautious step forward, my shoes scraping against the uneven stone. Then how did this map know about it? Hermione bit her lip. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Ron sighed. Or maybe we should figure out how to get out before we start asking too many questions. Before either of us could respond, something shifted in the air. A soft click echoed down the corridor, followed by a low, grinding noise, stone scraping against stone. Then, from the darkness, footsteps. I froze. So did Hermione. Ron's eyes widened in sheer panic. Tell me that was one of you. Nobody spoke. The footsteps grew louder. Steady. Measured. Coming closer. Instinctively, we stepped back, pressing ourselves against the cold stone wall. The air felt heavier, as if something enormous was moving toward us. The darkness ahead swallowed our light, refusing to reveal whatever lay beyond. Then, a voice. Low. Hollow. You should not be here. The words slithered through the corridor, not spoken aloud, but breathed into the very air around us. My grip tightened on my wand. I could feel my heartbeat hammering against my ribs. Hermione's face had gone pale. Ron was gripping his wand so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Then, suddenly, the footsteps stopped. Silence. Complete. Utter. Silence. I dared to exhale. And then, the corridor exploded into chaos. A deafening roar filled the space, and the walls lurched, as if the entire chamber had been waiting for us to arrive before springing its trap. The stone beneath our feet trembled. The darkness itself seemed to move, rushing toward us like a living thing. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. Cloaked in deep black, its form barely distinguishable from the surrounding void, it moved with unnatural fluidity. It had no discernible face, just two burning blue eyes, glowing like ghostly fire. Ron didn't hesitate. Run. We turned and bolted down the corridor. The walls closed in around us, shifting and twisting. It felt as though the castle itself was warping, changing to keep us trapped. The map had shown a clear path, but now there were no markings, no indicators of where to turn. Behind us, the figure glided forward, faster than it should be able to move. It didn't run, it flowed, its presence sending a chill down my spine that no amount of adrenaline could fight off. The passage split ahead. Left or right? Hermione yelled, "Left." I didn't question her. I turned sharply, nearly losing my balance as the uneven floor shifted beneath me. Ron let out a curse as he skidded into the wall before scrambling forward again. The sound of pursuit never stopped. The blue-eyed specter was still there, still following. It made no sound except for the eerie hum of magic that seemed to thrum through the walls, pressing against us like an unseen force. "Where are we going?" Ron shouted between ragged breaths. Hermione scanned the corridor ahead, her mind racing even as we ran. "There's a staircase. There should be a staircase." We didn't see one. Just more darkness. More shifting walls. More wrong turns. The air grew colder. My breath came out in short, sharp bursts. Every muscle in my body screamed in protest, but we couldn't stop. I risked a glance over my shoulder. It was closer. The blue glow of its eyes burned brighter, and I swore I saw something twisting in its silhouette. Tendrils of shadow? A flickering robe? It was changing, becoming something more than just a shape in the dark. Hermione suddenly gasped. There, ahead of us, a jagged opening appeared in the stone, a narrow gap, barely visible in the dim light of our wands. It was small, almost too small. Go! I shouted. Hermione went first, squeezing through the gap, her shoulders scraping hard against the rough stone. Ron shoved me forward. Move, Harry! I barely managed to push myself through before Ron followed, grunting as he forced his way in after me. The stone tore at my robes, but I didn't care. We had to get away. The moment Ron was through, we turned back. The passage behind us was dark, silent. No sign of the figure. No glowing eyes. Nothing. Just an empty corridor, as if it had never been there. We stood there, panting, hearts hammering in our chests. Ron collapsed against the wall, sucking in deep breaths. I hate everything about this. Hermione was trembling, her mind clearly trying to process what had just happened. That wasn't a ghost. No, I said, still staring into the darkness. It wasn't. Because ghosts didn't move like that. Ghosts didn't chase. Hermione's voice was barely above a whisper. What was it? I shook my head. I didn't know. And that was what scared me the most. Silence stretched between us for a long time. Then, finally, Hermione straightened, glancing down at the map in my hand. It was glowing. The ink had shifted, revealing a new path, one that hadn't been there before. Ron groaned. Oh, you've got to be joking. Hermione's eyes met mine. I think it wants us to keep going. I didn't answer, because I already knew. Whatever we had just escaped from, whatever that thing had been, it wasn't the real danger. The real danger was still waiting for us. And we had no choice but to move forward. The narrow tunnel we had squeezed through was damp and uneven, the rough stone scraping against my arms as we pushed forward. Our footsteps echoed in the confined space, a constant reminder of how alone we were in this forgotten part of the castle. The deeper we went, the more the air changed, thicker, heavier, carrying the faint scent of something ancient. Something hidden for a reason. I didn't know how much time had passed since we had escaped from the blue-eyed specter in the corridor. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. The castle had a way of warping time, making you feel like you were moving forward while somehow remaining trapped. Ron broke the silence, his voice hoarse. Tell me we're not following this thing blindly. Hermione glanced down at the map, her hands still trembling. The golden ink flickered as if alive, shifting in ways no ordinary parchment should. The lines of the castle pulsed, redrawing themselves every few seconds. It was showing us something, but only revealing what it wanted us to see. We don't have a choice, she muttered. The way back is gone. I turned slightly, my wand illuminating the space behind us. The tunnel we had come through had vanished. Where once there had been an opening, there was now only solid stone. Ron cursed under his breath. Brilliant. Just brilliant. Hermione didn't reply. She was too focused on the map, tracing a route that led deeper into the unknown. I exhaled slowly. Let's keep moving. The tunnel began to widen, revealing walls lined with strange carvings. Not Hogwarts' usual decorative flourishes, but something much older. The figures etched into the stone were twisted, their faces elongated in expressions of fear or worship. I couldn't tell which. Some of the carvings depicted serpents winding through corridors, their eyes like hollow pits. Others showed what looked like a massive door, standing alone in an abyss of darkness. This isn't just part of the castle, Hermione whispered. This place is older. Older than Hogwarts? Ron asked. That's not possible. Hermione ran her fingers over the carvings, her brow furrowed. The founders didn't build everything, Ron. Some of Hogwarts was here long before them. She pointed to a symbol, a familiar one. A coiled serpent surrounding a key. Salazar Slytherin must have known about this place. I swallowed. If Slytherin had known about it, that meant one thing: this wasn't a place we were meant to find. The tunnel finally opened into a massive chamber. My breath hitched. The space was unlike anything I had ever seen inside Hogwarts. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, vanishing into a void of darkness. Large pillars supported the cavernous room, their surfaces engraved with the same eerie carvings as before. The floor was made of black stone, polished yet cracked in several places. And in the center of it all, a chest. It sat on an elevated platform, ancient and covered in dust, its surface adorned with an intricate carving of a serpent eating its own tail. A shiver ran down my spine. Ron huffed. Oh, yeah. This isn't suspicious at all. Hermione's grip tightened around her wand. This must be what the map was leading us to. The air felt different here, charged with something unseen. My skin prickled as I took a step closer. The moment my foot touched the base of the platform, the entire room trembled. A deep, guttural hiss echoed from the shadows. I froze. Ron sucked in a sharp breath. Tell me that was the wind. It wasn't. Something shifted in the darkness. A presence, huge and waiting. The sound wasn't just a hiss. It was breathing. The carvings on the walls suddenly lit up, a sickly green glow tracing the serpentine patterns across the stone. The temperature in the room dropped. I could see my own breath in the air. Then, the chest moved. Not much, just the slightest shift. But enough. Ron took a step back. Nope. I'm done. Hermione's eyes darted between the glowing carvings and the chest. Something is. A voice whispered through the chamber. You should not have come here. It wasn't loud. It wasn't a scream or a roar. But somehow, it was worse. It came from everywhere, from the walls, from the floor, from the darkness itself. I felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on us. And then, the serpents and the carvings began to move. Their stone bodies twisted, slithering across the walls, their empty eyes glowing. They uncoiled from the patterns, peeling away from the stone as if they had only been sleeping. One by one, they dropped to the floor. And then they started coming toward us. Ron screamed. I grabbed Hermione's arm and yanked her back as the first snake lunged. Its fangs sank into the ground where she had been standing just seconds ago, leaving a smoking black scorch mark. Run! I yelled. We turned and sprinted. The serpents weren't normal. They weren't alive, not in the way real creatures were. Their bodies glowed with the same eerie green light, their movements too fluid, too unnatural. They didn't slither, they glided, their forms shifting like living shadows. One of them shot forward, blocking our path. Its mouth opened wider than it should have, revealing a pit of darkness rather than fangs. I barely had time to react. Stupefy. The spell hit it dead on and passed straight through. It didn't even flinch. Panic gripped my chest. They weren't physical. Spells wouldn't stop them. Hermione grabbed my wrist. We have to get to the chest. I hesitated for only a second, but she was right. The map had led us here. If there was a way out, it had to be there. We turned back, dodging between the advancing serpents. Ron was ahead of us, scrambling onto the platform, his eyes wide with fear. What deal we do? He shouted. I reached the chest first, hard hammering. It had no lock. No visible way to open it. Just the carving of the serpent eating its tail. Then, Hermione's voice, sharp. Harry! Say something in Parseltongue. I didn't think. I just spoke. Open. The moment the word left my lips, the entire room shook. The chest cracked open, not like a normal lid lifting, but as if the wood itself was splitting apart. Inside, a scroll. Rolled tightly, its parchment glowing with golden runes. But before I could reach for it, everything went dark. A deep, guttural growl rumbled through the chamber. The air turned icy cold. And from the shadows, something else began to rise. Something much, much worse than the serpents. The darkness that swallowed the chamber was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. It wasn't just the absence of light, it was a tangible, suffocating void that pressed against my skin, seeping into my bones. My lungs felt tight, as though the air itself had thickened, forcing me to struggle for breath. I could hear Ron and Hermione beside me, their breathing ragged, but I couldn't see them. And then, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared in the void. Not floating, not detached. They belonged to something. Something massive. A heavy, unnatural growl rumbled through the air, reverberating through my chest. The stone beneath my feet trembled. The serpents that had been attacking us only moments ago suddenly stopped. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them slithering away, retreating into the walls as if afraid of what had awakened. A second pair of eyes blinked open. Then a third. And a fourth. I froze. This wasn't just one creature. There were many. My fingers tightened around my wand, but deep down, I knew I wasn't prepared for this. None of us were. Hermione's whisper was barely audible. "Harry, what is that?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. A deep, inhuman voice filled the chamber, speaking in a language I didn't understand. The words slithered through the air like smoke, twisting into my ears. I could feel them more than hear them, ancient, powerful, and filled with something sinister. And then, the voice shifted. It spoke in parcel tongue. "You are not meant to be here." I shivered. "You seek what should remain lost." The air grew colder. I could barely hold my wand steady. "The map led you here. But the map is not yours to wield." A sudden force ripped through the chamber, a blast of icy wind sending us flying backward. I hit the stone floor hard, my vision spinning. The runes on the walls flared to life, casting eerie green light across the space. And finally, I saw it. The creature. It wasn't human. It wasn't even entirely solid. Its form shifted like smoke, barely holding shape, but its eyes, those burning red slits, were fixed on us with pure hunger. Its body was wrapped in tattered black robes, though they didn't seem to be made of fabric. They were like living shadows, curling and stretching unnaturally. At its core, there was a void, a hollow space where a heart should have been. It took a step forward. The room shook. I scrambled to my feet, wand raised. Hermione and Ron were beside me, their faces pale. Ron swallowed hard. "What the bloody hell is that?" Hermione's voice trembled. It's not a Dementor, but it's something worse." The entity tilted its head, as if amused. "You do not even know what you have awakened." And then, the chest behind us burst open completely. A wave of pure energy exploded from within, golden light colliding with the surrounding darkness. I barely had time to react before the force pulled at me, dragging me toward the chest. Hermione grabbed my wrist, trying to anchor me. Ron yelled, but his voice was drowned out by the roaring winds. The entire chamber was caught in a storm of magic, the old runes shattering as the force of the explosion reached them. And from within the chest, the scroll began to unravel on its own. The golden runes on its surface shifted, rewriting themselves in real time, as if the very knowledge it contained was too dangerous to be understood all at once. The text flickered, pulsating like a heartbeat, ancient words glowing against the aged parchment. The entity's eyes widened. No. For the first time, there was something in its voice. Fear. You cannot unleash it. Before I could react, the creature lunged. I barely had time to throw myself out of the way before its clawed hand struck the stone where I had just been. The impact sent cracks rippling across the floor, chunks of rock splitting apart. Hermione shouted a spell. Expelliarmus. The red light hit the creature and passed straight through. It didn't even flinch. It turned toward her slowly, those glowing eyes locking onto her. My stomach twisted. We couldn't fight this thing, but we had to do something. Ron was already scrambling toward the scroll, trying to grab it. What do we do? Do we take it? Destroy it? I hesitated. The entity was terrified of the scroll. That meant it was important. But why? And then I saw it. The moment Ron's fingers brushed the parchment, the golden runes shifted again. A symbol appeared, one I recognized. The Deathly Hallows. My breath caught in my throat. The scroll wasn't just a map. It was a key. A key to something far more powerful than we could understand. The entity let out a roar, its form expanding, shadows writhing around it like living chains. You do not understand what you have found. The air crackled. Magic was building. We had seconds before this thing ended us. Hermione made a decision before I could. She grabbed the scroll from Ron's hands, clutching it to her chest. And then, without hesitation, she started reading. Golden light erupted from the parchment. The runes leaped off the page, swirling around her, wrapping her in a protective glow. The wind intensified, howling through the chamber as the very foundation of Hogwarts shook. The entity screamed. Its body began to unravel, its form collapsing into tendrils of darkness. No, no! This knowledge is forbidden. But it was too late. The scroll had been activated, and whatever was sealed inside was waking up. The golden light from the scroll pulsed and expanded, forming a shimmering sphere around Hermione as she read aloud. The words, ancient and powerful, echoed in the vast chamber, reverberating against the stone walls. The entity before us writhed, its shadowy form twisting violently, fighting against the magic unraveling it. The red glow of its eyes flickered, and for the first time, I saw something in them that made my blood run cold. Desperation. You do not understand what you are doing, it roared, its voice an unnatural mixture of rage and fear. The chamber trembled as the creature lunged toward Hermione, moving faster than before. It was no longer toying with us. It knew it was running out of time. I reacted on instinct. Protego Maxima. A bright blue shield erupted between Hermione and the entity, stopping it inches from her. The force of the impact sent shockwaves rippling through the air, pushing me back. My feet barely managed to hold their ground as the magical energy crackled violently around us. The thing shrieked, its body pulsing with malevolent energy as it slammed against my shield again. I gritted my teeth. It was breaking through. Ron scrambled to my side, his face pale. Harry, we need something stronger. It's going to. A sudden gust of black wind blasted toward us, shattering my shield completely. The force sent me flying backward, my back slamming hard against a stone pillar. Pain shot through my ribs, and for a moment, my vision blurred. I heard Ron yelling, but his voice was distant, drowned out by the deafening hum of magic in the air. I forced my eyes open just in time to see the entity closing in on Hermione. Its clawed hand was reaching for her. I lunged. Stupefy. A bolt of red light blasted from my wand, hitting the creature in the chest. It staggered but didn't fall. Instead, it turned toward me, its form shifting wildly as if it were struggling to maintain its shape. I took a shaky step forward, raising my wand again. My mind was racing. It wasn't immune to spells. It could be hurt. That meant it could be stopped. Hermione, still surrounded by the golden runes, didn't even look up as she continued reading. The ancient words left her lips faster now, as if the scroll itself was urging her to finish before it was too late. The ground cracked beneath us. A low rumble shook the chamber, sending dust and debris raining down from the ceiling. The magic was becoming unstable. Ron sprinted toward Hermione, shielding her with his body as rocks crashed around them. I turned back to the entity, my heart pounding. If it reached her, we were finished. I had to end this. Tightening my grip on my wand, I took a deep breath. Then, I charged. The entity let out a guttural growl, lunging toward me at the same time. Its body twisted midair, becoming a swirling mass of shadows that engulfed me entirely. The cold was unbearable. It wasn't just physical, it was inside me, seeping into my skin, my lungs, my mind. My heartbeat slowed, my limbs felt like lead, and for a moment, I couldn't even remember why I was fighting. I saw images flash before my eyes, visions, memories that weren't mine. A dark tower hidden beneath the school. A circle of hooded figures whispering incantations into the night. A hand, ancient and withered, tracing symbols into the very stone of Hogwarts itself. I gasped as the visions vanished. My strength was fading. I could feel my soul being torn away. No. No. I clenched my teeth, forcing my body to move. With everything I had left, I gripped my wand and snarled. Expecto Patronum. A brilliant white stag exploded from my wand, shattering the darkness around me. The entity let out a horrible, distorted scream as my Patronus ripped through it, forcing it to reform. I collapsed to my knees, gasping for air, my entire body shaking from the cold. But I had done it. It was weakened. I looked up just in time to see Hermione finish the spell. The golden lens on the scroll lifted off the page completely, swirling into the air like living fireflies. They converged above her, forming an intricate sigil that pulsed with raw power. The entity turned toward her, its red eyes burning with rage. No! Stop her! It lunged. But the moment it passed through the sigil, its body convulsed violently. A roar of agony filled the chamber as the sigil collapsed inward, pulling the entity with it. The creature fought to escape, but the magic was too strong. It was being sealed away. The entire chamber shook violently. The magic in the air was too unstable. The room was going to collapse. Hermione, we have to go. Ron grabbed her arm, trying to pull her away, but she shook her head. Her hands were still gripping the scroll. It wasn't over. The sigil pulsed one last time before shooting downward, striking the floor. The entire chamber split open. A deep chasm yawned beneath us, revealing a pit of pure darkness. And from within that abyss, a figure began to rise. Tall, cloaked, face hidden beneath a hood. But the moment I saw it, my scar burned. Pain exploded through my skull, blinding me. I heard a whisper, no, a voice, inside my mind. So, you have come at last. And then, everything collapsed. The ceiling caved in, stone and rubble crashing down as the chamber imploded. I barely had time to reach out before the magic swallowed us whole. Pain. That was the first thing I felt. Sharp, all-consuming pain searing through my body like fire. My head pounded, my limbs felt heavy, and my lungs burned as if I had been drowning. I tried to move, but realized I was lying on something cold and hard. Stone. For a long moment, I just breathed, the distant echoes of the collapsing chamber still ringing in my ears. The air smelled of dust and magic, raw, untamed magic, like the aftermath of a great spell. Then, a voice. Harry. I barely registered it before someone grabbed my shoulder, shaking me. I blinked rapidly, my vision clearing enough to make out a blurry face hovering over me. A familiar face. Ron, I croaked. My throat felt raw, like I'd been screaming. What happened? Ron exhaled a shaky breath, his face pale, his clothes torn and covered in dust. Mate, I don't know. 1 second we were in that bloody chamber, and then everything he made a wild gesture with his hands, eyes still wide with disbelief. I forced myself to sit up despite the pain screaming through my ribs. That's when I saw Hermione. She was sprawled out a few feet away, motionless. Hermione. Panic surged through me as I scrambled toward her, ignoring the way my body protested with every movement. I dropped to my knees beside her, reaching out with shaking hands. Hermione, wake up. Come on. Ron knelt beside me, face tight with worry. Is she? She's breathing, I said quickly, relief flooding through me. But it was weak, too weak. I shook her gently. Hermione, it's over. You did it. Her eyelashes fluttered, then, very slowly, she opened her eyes. For a moment, she just stared at me, dazed. Then, in a whisper, she said, Did we win? I let out a breath that was half a laugh, half a sob. I think so. Hermione struggled to sit up, wincing as she did. The chamber. Gone, Ron said, glancing around. I don't even know where we are anymore. I finally took a proper look at our surroundings. We weren't in the chamber anymore. We weren't even underground. Instead, we were back in Hogwarts, in the Great Hall. But something was wrong. The hall was empty. No students, no teachers. The long dining tables were gone, replaced by the cold stone floor. The enchanted ceiling above us, which usually mirrored the sky, was completely black, like ink had swallowed the stars. The torches on the walls flickered weakly, their flames casting eerie shadows. This isn't right, Hermione whispered. Why is it so? Boom. A distant, thunderous sound echoed through the castle, shaking the walls. We all turned toward the great wooden doors at the end of the hall. And then, they opened on their own. The doors groaned as they swung inward, revealing the vast, dark corridor beyond. A chill ran down my spine. Something wasn't right. Hermione, I said slowly, Are you sure the spell worked? The entity, it's gone, right? Her lips parted as if she was about to say yes. But then, her expression changed. Her eyes widened and her face drained of all color. I followed her gaze and I saw it. A figure stood in the doorway. Tall, cloaked in black, face hidden beneath a hood. But I knew, even before it stepped forward, even before it lifted its head just enough for me to see the glint of red eyes beneath the hood. I knew. A terrible, icy whisper filled the hall. So, you have returned to me. My scar burned. The pain shot through my skull like a white-hot blade, making me stagger. I clutched my forehead, gasping. My vision blurred, but I forced myself to look up. The figure wasn't moving. It stood there, watching, waiting. Ron swore under his breath. Tell me that's not who I think it is. But Hermione, she was shaking. No, she whispered. That's not, it can't be. I swallowed hard. Who, Hermione? She turned to me, and for the first time since I'd known her, I saw pure, unfiltered fear in her eyes. It's not Voldemort, she whispered. It's worse. The torches flickered violently. The darkness in the ceiling above us swirled, like a storm forming in the sky. The figure took another step forward. You have disturbed the old magic, foolish children. Now you must suffer the consequences. My fingers tightened around my wand. My heart was hammering. I had fought dark forces before. I had faced Dementors, Death Eaters, Voldemort himself. But this felt different. The very air around us hummed with its presence, like reality itself was bending under the weight of it. Ron grabbed my arm. Harry, what do we do? I had no idea. Hermione clenched her fists. We need to run. We need to. No. The entire castle shook. A shockwave of black magic burst from the figure, hitting us like a hurricane. I barely had time to raise my wand before the force sent me flying backward. I hit the stone floor hard. The world spun. My ears rang. I barely registered Ron shouting my name before my vision blurred. And then, everything stopped. Silence. Darkness. I opened my eyes. And I was somewhere else. Not Hogwarts. Not the Great Hall. Just nothing. A vast, empty space stretching in every direction, filled with swirling gray mist. The air was thick, pressing against my skin, making it hard to breathe. I turned, and I saw him, standing in the mist, staring at me. The figure. But this time, I could see his face. It was ancient, pale, cracked like stone. His eyes were not red anymore, but black, deep, endless voids that seemed to pull at all light. His mouth twisted into a terrible, knowing smile. Do you understand now, Harry Potter? His voice was inside my mind. You did not win. You merely opened the door. I tried to lift my wand, but I couldn't move. His smile widened. You are the key, child. You always were. The mist rushed toward me. I opened my mouth to scream. But then, I woke up, gasping, heart pounding. I was back. Back in Hogwarts. Back in the Great Hall. Ron and Hermione were beside me, shaking me awake. Their faces filled with relief, but also fear. Mate, Ron said breathlessly, you were out for hours. We thought, but I barely heard him, because the figure was gone. And yet, the whisper still echoed in my mind. You did not win. You merely opened the door. I looked down at my hands, still trembling. Something was different. Something had changed. And deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. And now, slowly, this story begins to fade, like the gentle flicker of a candle in the dark. Hogwarts falls silent once more, keeping its secrets hidden behind ancient walls that have witnessed countless tales. Footsteps in the stone corridors disappear, whispers of mystery dissolve, and tonight's adventure comes to an end, for now. Feel the quiet embrace you, bringing a sense of calm that slowly settles within. Your breaths grow slower, deeper. Close your eyes. Let your imagination drift into the warmth of the night. There is no need to rush. The world will still be here when you wake. For now, allow yourself to sink into stillness, letting sleep carry you into peaceful dreams. Rest well, and until we meet again in the next story.